let's continue our NFL draft questions. We've had a different question each hour today, starting all the way back in the first hour around Jeremiah Love, when we think he will be drafted. We talked about Ty Simpson. How about a player that is currently projected to maybe finish or be drafted, I should say, outside the top 20? Who do you really like that could be someone that's drafted in the first round, late, second round, early? You know what? You're like, hey, that player is going to end up having a really nice career, or maybe you just think he's going to go higher than the projections are right now. Because as we know, there will be a surprise or two. Someone that everybody thinks is going to go 25 is going to end up going 15 or 18 in the draft. It happens every year.
I don't want this to come across as extreme homerism. Let me preface this by saying that, okay?
Oh boy.
But
Oh boy. I already know where you're going.
there is a name in this year's draft that I love. And I know whoever calls out this name on draft night, whether it be night 1 or night 2, is going to love this name as well. It is a guy who's been comped with George Karlaftis, a 6'6", 238 edge rusher with 6.5 sacks and 46 pressures in the SEC last year, where the trenches tend to be the biggest, while altering between both the left and right edge with a 33-inch arm span and very active hands, with a closing speed better than his first step, but a relentless attitude. And before I say the name, let me ask you, if you want a wide receiver, you go to Ohio State, Tennessee, right? If you want a quarterback, USC, a lot of times. If you want a linebacker, Penn State. If you want a fast food steak burger, you're probably hitting up Steak and Shake, right? And if you want a very good defensive lineman in the NFL, you go to the D-line zoo. Justin Smith, Alden Smith, Sheldon Richardson, Marcus Golden, Shane Ray, Coney Ely, Charles Harris, Ziggy Hood, Brian Smith, multiple top 15 picks, several Pro Bowls, many awards. You got to go to Columbia, Missouri, and select Mr. Zion Young, who spent the last 2 years in Mizzou, making a name for himself after spending some time at Michigan State. Zion Young is a name that I legitimately believe is going to make someone very happy as an edge rusher in the NFL. And I say that because of, the school he's coming from, a school that does produce very good, solid defensive linemen in the NFL. But because of what I saw out of him last year, he was a monster. He legitimately won games for Mizzou in his time there because of the dominance that he had. And it's not like he's playing a cupcake schedule either. He's going up against, some of the biggest, baddest offensive linemen in the sport, because that's what the SEC is known for. They build their football programs in the trenches, and Zion Young dominated. So I love Zion Young. I think is a name that should be talked about more, and one that I think has a chance to go late first round, but I imagine will probably be more of a day 2 pick.
I knew. Exactly.
I dragged it out. Just for you.
I knew exactly the name. Once you said, I don't mean to be a homer, I knew exactly the name you were about to throw. And look, I want to hate on it so badly, given our KUMU rivalry we have on this show. I want to hate it so badly. But I do agree with you that Zion Young, I think, is going to be a very nice NFL player. And I think there's a real chance, frankly, he's drafted at 29 to Kansas City. He has come up locally on our show as well. I will point out, not to drag the guy under the mud, but one concern with the current Chiefs' track record of drafting players with character concerns would be Zion Young did have the DUI here recently, and I don't know if that scares some teams off. But if we're talking just football, I do think he has a chance to be a pretty special player in the league. The question is, how far does he fall in the draft? My guess is he'll go no later than 35, though. Like I think he's going to either be one of the last first-round picks, or, Friday he's the first or second name called. So, no, I don't hate that as much as I want to hate it. I think that's a pretty good name to throw out there. I'll go with it's not as far down the board maybe as potentially him. This is a guy that's probably a first-rounder for sure, but I think he might project as an outside top 20 guy that could end up being picked much higher than we think. How about Caden Proctor, the tackle at Alabama, who is consensus mock right now around 24 or so late first round pick. Caden Proctor is somebody that has struggled to keep some of the weight off, but you want to talk just about an athletic freak that can give you some options there on your offensive line. I think I saw, who was it? Was it Mel Kiper? Somebody mocked him to the Detroit Lions, even in the teens here. But I think Caden Proctor would be a name to throw out there that could go a lot higher than we realize. He did have some injury problems, but he is somebody that's taken a couple top 30 visits. He was impressive at the Alabama Pro Day. The concerns about him, well, it's because he's 6'7", 352, which is insane, is going to be the fact that he has struggled to keep the weight off. And so does that worry some teams? But I think that athleticism that he has at that size, you just don't find that every day. And so some team's going to fall in love with that and say, man, he's 6'7" in that size, and we think he can actually move around. He could end up being our legitimate franchise right tackle. I think he's more of a right tackle than a left tackle.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Caden Proctor, a guy who Zion Young beat on the one of the first plays of the second half against Alabama for a strip sack fumble against Ty Simpson. Yeah, one of his key highlights of the year. If I'm not mistaken, it might not have been Caden Proctor, but it definitely was against Alabama, obviously. But no, but Caden Proctor, I think he's a size guy, right? Like it's like he just tremendous.
You want to hear
size,
the freak stuff about him? Some of these numbers around him, man, are absolutely insane. 405 power clean, 535 bench, 815 squat. I mean, just an absolute freak.
815.
He also got
815 squat.
Yeah.
815. That he is almost squatting a half a ton.
Yeah, just insane. He also got the ball 5 times handed to him. Remember, because the Alabama would line him up in some spots. So he's just an athletic guy. I could, the Lions are probably mocked, he's mocked to the Lions a lot because people probably think Dan Campbell is just going to fall in love with this guy, that with this athleticism and benching or squatting. I'm sorry, 815.
Just insane. And his running back comp reminds me of a Derrick Henry, right? And maybe that's the easy comp because it's college, but size-wise, for sure, 6'7", 352 pounds, dude is insane. Another name that I low-key love is Kenyon Sadiq, because I feel like he's the tight end out of Oregon, guy that I think you could do a lot of different things with. He's like a wide receiver in a tight end's body, if that makes sense. Like, almost kind of reminds me of like a Jonnu Smith type player that I think if you have the right offensive coordinator, you could get real creative with the things that you do with him. And he's fast and, just played really well at Oregon. That's a guy that I love, that I would love to see someone do something. That's the problem with the NFL draft too. Is like a lot of times you get players that are really good and they get drafted to a team that they just do not fit in the system, and they just completely kind of waste the talent. That's why almost every pick in the NFL draft is a coin flip to begin with, and some of that is on the player itself, but a lot of it is with the team that drafts the player and not knowing how to utilize or just get the most out of their abilities. But I hope Kenyon Sadiq goes to someone, I think a comp that I saw for him was Trey McBride. Just someone like, I don't know. I would just love to see what he does at the next level.
Eli Stowers is the other tight end. That should be the second tight end off the board. Does Stowers go late first, or does Stowers fall to the second round? I think some of the mocks right now have Stowers more of a guy that's picked in the 50s than a guy that's picked in the 30s. And so some of that will be predicated on where Sadiq goes. He's definitely a name that I think if we talk about someone that could just go way higher than everybody believes, and just could just surprise everybody, and all of a sudden he's off the board at 10 or 9 or something, Sadiq would be a name I would put in that category. Not that I think it's a lock that happens, but there's a list of a few names that could end up going way higher than everybody thinks on Thursday night, and I would put Sadiq in that category.